Welcome to Rick Rack Ruby. I'm Laura Cluvo. You can see on the bulletin board behind me all of the ornaments that I've made so far from the Christmas Adventure fabric collection. I have been having a lot of fun. I'm very inspired by this collection, and the more that I make, the more ideas that I have. So I certainly do not want to limit myself to a number of ornaments or even a number of fabrics. Here are the fabrics that I have left. Lots of green, blue, the light green, a few pinks, whites, the gold, and of course some scraps. Today we will be making this skinny stuffed angel ornament. She's fun and easy, so let's get started. Well, I could not resist making these pink camper stockings. I just love the campers so much, and the stocking design was so perfect for it that I just went ahead and plunged in to the pink collection and made 8 of these stockings. And as a result, I have very little of this pink ornament fabric left, but I'm determined to create 8 stuffed angels, so I just had to modify my design. So let's start with the pattern, and I will describe it later on, but it's small. It's not as small as the previous angel. It's not as big as the Santa, so it's kind of in between, and that's what I wanted. I have cut out 8 of these foundations. This is 50 weight non-woven Pellon interfacing. So these will be the foundation. First of all, I use this pattern and I cut out a little section of it. This is all that I can use from the pink. Not only is it just a scrap, but it's also directional. So with some fabrics I would be able to, you can tell I cut all these stockings from this. With some fabrics I would be able to, cut them in different directions, but this is directional, and so I'm kind of limited. But along the bottom here, I think I have enough to make quite a few. I'm not going to try to center anything unless it looks like it would be very easy. And I'm going to pin and cut out this little section to get started. There we go. So I'm going to line that up on my foundation. I like the way this is centered, but by the time I stuff it and gather it and glue the lace over, I don't think it's going to show very much, but that's okay. And then with my argyle, which it looks like I have a very small piece of the argyle as well, but I've already cut out my backs, so that that's a good head start. This edge is nice and straight. See how it's right across the edges of those red triangles? So I'm going to line it up along the cut edge of the ornament. Pin, stitch, flip, and press. And I'll be right back. There we go. Now I'm just going to trim around the bottom. And I'm going to try to get pretty close because I don't want to waste any fabric, and I need to be able to see how much space I have for the lace. This lace is just from JoAnn Fabrics, and there is a right side and a wrong side. And I'm going to use 3 scallops, so 3 of these. And you can use any lace you like. Then I think I'll line that up kind of right along the center where the centers of the flowers are. I'll line that up along the fold, and I'm just going to top stitch it just up, across, and down. Now I'll stitch all the way around just to hold the layers together with a very small seam allowance, as small as I can possibly make it. There we go. I stitched all the way around the edge, and now I will match it up to a back. I will seam around the outside with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, leaving the top open for turning. I'm using white thread for all of these steps. There's my seam. I'm going to trim that seam allowance a little bit and clip around the rounded bottom there and turn it to the right side. Here's how it looks when it's trimmed and clipped. See all those clipped pieces there? Okay, now I'll turn it to the right side. I'm always certain to leave enough of an opening at the top so that turning anything is not a struggle. Nobody wants to struggle. And usually I just look around and see what I have handy. Maybe this, to kind of push out the edges. I want to be sure that the seam is all the way. That looks good. The seam is all the way on the outside so you can kind of see it. There's nothing that's caught. There we go. I think I'll press that and stuff it. I'm just about done with the stuffing, and I will gather up the top with a double strand of quilting thread. But I just wanted to show you, I know nobody needs to watch me stuff this, but it was really quick. This is kind of a small project. You can see how big it is, and it's thin, you know, it's narrow, and so it didn't take long at all to stuff. To gather up the opening, I'm going to secure the thread in the seam allowance right here on the side, and then the knot is on the inside. And then I'll just do a running stitch all the way around. I'm going to let that tuck in, pull it tight, like that, and then I'm going to go back and forth a few times, and then I'll secure my thread in the back. I know that I'm going to be gluing some wings over the back, and so it won't show. I think that's enough. So in the back here, I'm going to do a little French knot, 1, 2. And then just pop it beneath the surface. It's not a completely foolproof way, but it's fast and easy. Here is my face. I've already created the face, and you can find the directions for the Rick Rack Ruby face in my Focus on Faces video. It's really fast and easy. I'm just going to apply some hot glue right here to the underside and press it right onto the top. A generous amount of glue. Don't want her head coming off. That looks good. And then I'm going to do, I think this is about 18 inches of lace. I'm going to do a collar, a lace collar, just by gathering up the straight edge of this lace. This is my favorite lace. It's about 7/8 of an inch wide. It doesn't seem that wide, but when I measured it, it was that wide. But I think anything between 1/2 inch to 7/8 of an inch would be fine. This is a little bit wide, but it looks cute. So I'm going to fold over the end, secure my knot, and just begin gathering. Don't make it hard. You don't have to stitch through the header. Just stitch below the header. And that gathers up really well. My collar is all gathered, and I'm going to place it around the neck of the angel and secure the ends in the back. I'll distribute the fullness all the way around. That looks good. Kind of pulling it in a little bit, nice and tight. That looks good. I want to make sure I can still see all of her features. And sometimes if it's too loose, then the lace will sort of creep up and just prevent you from appreciating her beauty. All right, I'm going to secure this in the back, knot off my thread. move on. In addition to using the Christmas Adventure collection for each one of my ornament projects, I also want to have some additional themes that run through. And one of them is the use of the red and white baker's twine. I'm going to try to use the red and white baker's twine for each of my designs. So for this project, I'm just going to make a little bow and tie the bow beneath her chin. I like to sew the twine through the collar instead of just tying it and gluing it, although that would also work just fine. But I just think by sewing it, I get a little extra security. I think for these, I want the loops to be shorter than the top of the lace. I'm going to add a little tiny bit of hot glue right here just to make sure those loops are going to stay how I like them. That looks good. And then of course I'll cut off the streamers and tie off the ends into overhand knots because otherwise they will kind of fray. Great. Now, if you like, you could add another embellishment right here, but I'm going to save that for her hair. I'm going to use 3 4x6 index cards. These are thin. Some index cards are heavy duty and they're really fun to use, but if you have regular index cards, then I'm going to recommend using 3. I have my favorite loopy mohair yarn, and this one is very fine. So you can make some adjustments if your yarn is a little bit thicker, but you can use any yarn you like. We're going to wrap the long way, so the 6-inch direction, about 25 times. Here's how it looks. Now I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch across the center, back and forth. I actually sewed across 3 times. I just want to make sure that it was completely perforated. It's just a little bit easier to tear out the card if it's thoroughly perforated. So now I'm going to take out the card. Yeah, I like that. So sewing across 3 times is a good idea. Easy, and that's complete. There's no little pieces stuck in there. All right, so this, I'm going to call this a wig. I use white thread, so it's it's a little bit more apparent than I would like, but you're not going to see it once the hair is done. Now we're going to call this the wig, and the wig is going to be glued across the top of the head this way. So not this way. So it's not like a part, it's like a hairband across the top of the head. So I'm going to begin by applying some hot glue across the top of her head. Nice and generous, you can see that. And then the center of the wig will be pressed into the glue. That looks good. I can tell I have way more on this side and not enough on that side, but it's okay because we can just pull this all the way around. Then I'll apply some more glue from here all the way around. There we go. As long as the ends connect, we're good. Here's how she looks, and we're going to draw this up into a top knot. I just want to make sure that I can see her face. That's the most important thing. You don't want the hair to be too far forward and that it looks even on both sides. And I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to draw this up. That looks good. And tie it off right above her head. I'm using the same thread that I used to gather up the collar and the opening at the top of her dress. And just to make sure that that's really secure, I'm going to actually sew through the hair. So a little bit beneath where I tied it, and then I'm going to tie it again and secure my thread. Now I'm going to create a hanging loop, and I'm sewing below the thread I have used to tie off the hair. I like a long hanging loop. Not too long, but you know, don't cut the ribbon so short that it's a struggle to tie it off. There you go. And now a halo. For her halo, I have 20 gauge gold wire. I'm going to cut off about 5 inches, and then I'm just going to wrap it into a circle and twist the ends, fold them down straight like this. Then I'll add a little bit of glue to the end and press that into her hair. There we go, her halo's all kind of caught up in her hair. I like that. And then I wanted to add a little embellishment. I have a couple of options. I want you to know that you don't have to always use whatever I use. You can select whatever you like, or maybe she doesn't even need it. But I'm going to put this bow, I love the bow, right on this side because I remember that's where I tied off the thread. So I'm going to put it on that side, hoping that the glue that I'm using for the bow will help me ensure that that is very secure. That looks good. Here is a size comparison. There's a smaller head and just a different design. But I wanted to do something different. I feel like maybe there was not enough contrast between her face, her hair, and her wings. So I want to be sure I had a strong contrast for this new one. And I'm going to use this, this paper red, strong red paper wing. I bought a package of this red cardstock at Michael's. It came like this. These are 6-inch squares, and it was a nice stack, probably 100 of them. And then this is my a little bit less than 5-inch scalloped die cut, which I use to cut out scalloped circles for the wings, and then folded them in half, and each one in half, and then added a decorative stitch. Now, if you don't have a die cutting machine or you don't like this idea, it's just as easy to trace a CD, it's about the same size, and make a regular circle wing, and then you can cut out the edges with a decorative shear of some sort, like a scalloping shear, and that's just as cute. Okay. So I'm going to add a circle of glue right here and press that onto the back of her head, trying to center it. For most things, I don't try to be a perfectionist, but I do want to center the wings. That looks good. Before we go, I wanted to show you how I drafted the pattern. First, I cut a 3 by 5-inch rectangle, folded it in half. You can see me kind of drawing the seam allowance so that I could assure that it was the right shape. But anyway, I folded it in half. The most important thing is to have enough room at the top. If you look at it, there's not that big of a difference, you know, in the width, but it does make a big difference once you have a seam allowance and you're gathering up the top, and you want to have enough room to stuff. So I have found that as long as I have 1.5 inches at the top, and then there's 2 pieces, so that's 3 inches, and then there's a seam allowance, so you subtract. But anyway, that's always enough room. So when this is folded in half, I make sure that I have 3 squares. So that's 3/4 of an inch. Then I go out all the way to the 3-inch and then come around. The other important thing is when you come around to the bottom, don't just go across the line. You want to have a little gentle slope down, you know, diagonal slope here. It's a little bit sweeter shape to give a little rounded bottom. And here's how it looks once it's all sewn up. Then, because I wanted to be really careful with my remaining scrap of the ornament fabric, I just folded this along here, and I determined that was about how much fabric that I had the scraps for. And so I just kind of traced it and cut it off right here. And this is 3 1/4 inches from the top, a 3 1/4 inch height, length, I don't know, 3 1/4 inches from the original pattern. I hope that's clear. Thank you for watching my tutorial. If you're enjoying my videos, please like, share, and subscribe.